3 tough decisions for IT leaders, lessons from complex digital transformations, and a comparison of Oracle Cloud versus Microsoft D365. Those are just a few of the topics we'll cover here in episode number 129 of Transformation Ground Control.
This is Transformation Ground Control, your source for all things business, technology, strategy, and change. If you're growing your business, leading change within your organization, or undertaking any sort of operational or technology change initiative, this podcast is for you. This show covers what you need to know about digital transformation, organizational change, operational improvement, and business growth.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And now, here's your host, Eric Kimberling.
Hello, welcome to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 129. This is the podcast that has everything to do with digital transformation, including the people, process, technology, and strategy sides of transformation. My name is Eric Kimberling, your host here today. I'm also the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world reach their third stage of digital transformation success. And with me, as always, is my co-host, Kyler Cheatham. Kyler, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me. Excited for today's episode.
Likewise, I'm excited. I always am, but I know you always are too. So it's nothing new really, but we're both excited as always for another great episode. We're going to have some good topics we'll cover here today. We're going to get into some audience questions as we always do in our opening segment. We'll take some questions from the audience that we've accumulated here in recent days and weeks over our social media outlets. And then we're going to get into some hot topics, two in particular that I think will be really interesting here this week. The first one is 3 tough decisions for IT leaders, which will be a really interesting conversation. We'll also talk about 5 misconceptions about digital transformation in those hot topics. And then later in the show, we are going to have our first guest, Dean Sam, who is the director of the Third Stage Consulting Asia Pacific office. He's based out of Hong Kong. He'll be joining us from Australia, actually. He's traveling to clients here this week in the Australia region. And he's going to be on the show talking about lessons from complex digital transformations. So we're going to hone in and sort of focus on larger, more complex digital transformations and what are some of the lessons from those larger, more complex digital transformations. And then finally, Kyler and I will unpack and do a comparison of Oracle Cloud versus Microsoft Dynamics 365, which will be a really good conversation. Even if you're not considering either or both of those systems, it's just a good way to understand what some of the nuances are, things to think about as you compare different technologies in the marketplace that you might consider for your digital transformation. So great show planned for you today. But before we jump into some of our hot topics and guests that we're going to bring onto the show, Kyler, what are some of these hot topics you've got for us? Or actually, sorry, not the hot topics, the questions. We're going to start with the questions, aren't we?
Well, I was going to say some of these are hot topics in the questions. But if you haven't heard of our question jar here, I ask Eric all of your audience questions that you put on either our Third Stage social media channels or his social media channels. You can use hashtag Ask Eric, and I will ask him these live throughout the week. So I've had this big old question in here for a little while, so we're gonna tackle it. Okay.
All right.
So it's more of a comment, but I think it's definitely something that's worth discussing when it comes to consultants. Consultants can't change your business processes or your people. You can't rely on consultants to be successful. The company must commit their time and resources to people, process, and technology. So what's your reaction to that?
Well, I totally agree, even though it may not be self-serving of me to admit that. I would certainly love to say that if you hire Third Stage or you hire us or our team to help with your digital transformation initiative, that you are guaranteed success. That is not true, because no consultant is going to guarantee success. All a consultant can do is help you be more successful, assuming that you have the internal commitment and focus and resources dedicated to the project. So I think it's absolutely critical to recognize that and sort of have maybe tempered expectations on what a consultant can do for you. And when I say consultant too, by the way, I mean, independent technology advisors like Third Stage, but I also mean, and I'm also referring to technology implementation consultants. So if you have a system integrator or a reseller or software vendor who's providing you the technical implementation services, you might lean heavily on those outside competencies that you don't have, but you don't want to get so dependent on those outside competencies that you create this sort of learned helplessness along the way. And it's very important that organizations recognize that they're the ones that have to own the results and the outcome of the digital transformation longer term. Your consultants are going to go away at some point, so it's ultimately your business, and you're stuck with the outcome of your digital transformation, for better or for worse. So I think that's a important balance that a lot of organizations have trouble finding.
Sure, that internalization, especially after the transformation's over, continuing to achieve that third stage. So, alrighty.
Yeah, the last thing you want to do is just have to have the consultants around. I mean,
Exactly.
as much as I love my clients, and we love our clients at third stage, you don't want to overstay your welcome as a consultant, and nor do you want to have your consultants overstay their welcome.
Absolutely. That knowledge transfer and empowering that internalization is definitely part of the process, part of what we teach. So this one is from your YouTube channel on how to become a consultant. So we have a lot of consultant-based questions today. What would be some advice you have for a recent grad that wants to get into SAP S/4HANA specifically?
Well, I think first of all, SAP S/4HANA is a good choice of technology to focus on. It's there's going to be, for years to come, there's going to be a lot of S/4HANA implementations, a lot of big companies that are going to be deploying S/4HANA. I guess my advice would be to, first and foremost, get that business experience to augment the technology experience. So assuming that you're going to get certified in SAP, and you're going to be a certified functional or technical consultant in SAP or in S/4HANA in particular, I think there's a lot of value in also deepening or sharpening your saw as it relates to some of the business components of transformation too. So understanding the operational side of a business, or the change management or the project management. I think just finding a business thread, a non-technical thread to augment your technical knowledge, I think that can be a really powerful combination. Certainly, again, you want to have the technical competency and the certification that you're going to presumably get or need to understand how S/4HANA works. But it's also important to have that business understanding. And I would argue that that's even more important than the technical understanding. So anything you do to broaden your skill set and sort of give you some additional perspective and skill sets beyond the technology side is going to be super helpful in the SAP space, or any sort of technology, whether it's SAP or anything else for that matter. It's the same advice would hold true for other types of technology focus as well.
Yeah, and if you're watching Eric's videos, you're in the right spot, on the right track. So very, very good.
Right. And of course, listen to this podcast, watch the YouTube videos. You'll learn more, hopefully, and that's more advice to keep you on that track as well.
Absolutely. We also have our SAP S/4HANA guide playbook as well, available for download in the links below. So that's a great kind of resource to kind of look through. Okay, what is the value of having all the modules in an ERP package from one single vendor?
Well, I'll tell you sort of like in a perfect world what the value is, and then I'll tell you what the real value is. So in a perfect world, in theory, the value of having all of your modules from one vendor is that you have a fully integrated system that is seamless. It's got a consistent user interface, a consistent user experience. Data is integrated. Business processes and workflows are all integrated throughout this one system. However, the reality is that even the bigger software vendors like SAP, like Oracle, like Microsoft, even though they have all these different modules that they offer as part of one single product suite, oftentimes it's more like a best of breed. It's almost like you have third-party bolt-ons to a core ERP system. It just so happens that one vendor owns those third-party bolt-ons. So just to give you an example, because we were just talking about SAP in the previous question, I'll use them as an example. When you look at SAP S/4HANA, a lot of times companies don't just buy S/4HANA and all the modules that go with that. They'll buy integrated business planning, the IBP module. They'll buy success factors for HCM. they'll buy Concur for time and expense reporting. They'll buy Ariba for procurement. So these are third-party systems that SAP has acquired, and they're starting to integrate with the core S/4HANA product. But for all practical purposes, it's like a best of breed. It's like you're deploying multiple systems, and they are multiple systems. So I'd say the first part of my answer, the sort of in theory, the way things sound on paper is that having one single ERP system provides that integration and that seamless experience, et cetera. But the reality is that these ERP vendors are out acquiring other software vendors, and they're trying to figure out ways to create a more seamless experience. But that's why I think best of breed is not such a bad thing, because the reality is even the single ERP vendors are providing a best of breed experience. And oftentimes you can find other third-party systems that might be able to handle some of those capabilities better. But I think what happens is a lot of times organizations either don't know that they're really getting themselves into a non-fully integrated single ERP system, or they're afraid to explore what their options are. And it's just the path of least resistance to just hire one software vendor and assume that one software vendor can handle all of your needs. And that's what the software vendors want too. Obviously, they want to sell you as much software as they can. So I think you just have to be able to see through that and take it all with a grain of salt.
Definitely. That professional skepticism that we always talk about is important when it comes to evaluating what that looks like and what is the best approach for your business. But all good stuff. You can definitely pop your comments or questions for Eric in wherever you're viewing today, or on any of his social media channels using Ask Eric, #AskEric. And I will ask him those questions live. But thank you for your insight, and thank you to the audience for your great questions.
Yeah, thank you. I love answering those questions. They're a lot of fun, and you do not share those questions with me in advance, which makes it even more fun.
Shock and awe.
Especially
That's
for
my
you.
approach. Yeah.
Right. Well, good. Well, thank you for those audience questions, and look forward to the future Ask Eric questions you might have for us. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to shift gears, and we're going to dive into a couple hot topics here after we take that break. We're going to get into 3 tough decisions for IT leaders, as well as 5 misconceptions about digital transformation. And then later in the show, after we get through those hot topics, we'll bring on Dean Sam from the Third Stage Consulting Asia Pacific team. He's based out of Hong Kong, joining us from Australia, actually, today. He'll be on talking about lessons from complex digital transformations. And then finally, last but not least, later in the show, Kyler and I will do a comparison of Oracle ERP Cloud versus Microsoft D365. So a lot more to cover in this episode of Transformation Ground Control. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
If you are aiming for transformation success, turn to Third Stage Consulting Group. Third Stage's independent and technology agnostic consulting team helps clients define their digital strategies, define their roadmaps, and manage their transformations. With offices in the US, Europe, and Australia, our team helps the world's most forward-thinking organizations through their transformation pitfalls and risks. If you are embarking on a digital transformation or business change initiative, contact Third Stage Consulting to see how we can help you reach the third stage of transformation success. Learn more about us and download independent reports, videos, and other best practices at thirdstage-consulting.com.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 129. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter, as well as audio podcast platforms throughout the world, including Amazon, Apple, and Google Podcasts, among others. So be sure to subscribe if you don't already and check us out there. So you've got a couple of hot topics here for us today, Kyler, that sound particularly interesting. They always are interesting, the hot topics you bring onto the show, but these 2 in particular sound very interesting. What do you have for us here?
Yeah. So the first article we're going to talk about is actually from CIO Magazine, and it's a really interesting profile of real life CIOs and tough decisions they've had to make. So they bucket all of the interviews into 3 decisions. And so I want to kind of unpack a few of them with you. So the first decision is reducing technical debt. And mostly that's getting those legacy systems audited, cleaned up, all of those types of different things to move to a new system. The second one is the one I kind of want to unpack with you, because this is one I've never heard before, and it's restricting access. So what this looks like is when a CIO has to go to department heads that have access to a certain user base in the legacy system. And with the new system, they won't have the same access, just to kind of streamline that from a cybersecurity standpoint, and then just also from an efficiency and approval process standpoint. And that can be really hard to go to specifically senior leadership and say, this won't be the same level of access that you're used to having. So that was one piece that I've never heard before. So I wanted to kind of get your reaction to changing those user profiles, specifically when it comes to what access you have as far as department heads and other senior leaderships that CIOs have to kind of go and say, this isn't going to be something that's going to be best for the business. We need to kind of future proof what this looks like.
Yeah. That's very interesting. That's super interesting. And the whole idea of future proofing and thinking beyond what the immediate needs are is certainly important. You want to think about how we can create an environment where we're not going to be obsolete again in 3 or 5 years. Having said that, though, I think there's a fine line you've got to walk there in terms of being careful not to try to bite off more than you can chew, all in the name of future proofing the organization. A lot of times organizations will just try to jump in too aggressively into new technologies or emerging technologies that they're not ready for, when they can't even handle the more basic fundamental technology. So I think there's a fine line there that a lot of organizations struggle with, where they fall on the spectrum of things. But I think that's an important point to note.
Yeah, absolutely. And mapping all of that out beforehand, and knowing that it could essentially transform or evolve too with the experience with the new system, what the needs will look like. So it's definitely an interesting one. The third one is transforming roles. And I wanted to kind of tell you about the case study that this specific CIO outlined. And he said during a digital transformation, it was decided that India in the APAC IT hub would lead the digital transformation. And he said it was one of the toughest decisions of his career to move all those digital initiatives, and SAP services, commercial application, IT security, infrastructure, all of those different things. And it was led by Team India. And that ruffled a lot of feathers within the organization. But by shifting it to India, the digital transformation costs came down almost 50%. So it made it more efficient and cost effective, so they could purchase and invest in more technology. This crucial decision by IT leaders has to align kind of seamlessly with business objectives, even if it means making tough or unpopular decisions. So kind of wanted to share that overall scenario with you and kind of see what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah, I think it's you hit an important point, which is the tough decisions that need to be made. I mean, anytime you're defining a future state and looking to the future of what your digital strategy is and what the digital transformation is going to look like and what your future operating model is going to look like, there are tough decisions that need to be made there. And a lot of times organizations and executive teams aren't ready for that, or they don't realize that this isn't just a technology project. There's a lot of key business decisions that need to be made there as well.
Yeah, it kind of made me think back to our digital stratosphere in our EMEA conference with our CIO panel. And one of their pieces of advice to people that want to be CIOs is to remember that it's one of the loneliest positions in the organization, because you do have to make incredibly tough decisions with new and emerging technology. So I thought that was interesting. If you haven't seen that, I highly recommend it. It was one of my favorite panels to moderate within my career. It's on our YouTube channel as well. So you can search CIO on our YouTube channel and find that panel. But thought that was a really interesting piece to kind of look at what are those tough decisions that they have to make.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is a good panel too, by the way. I agree with you. That panel discussion is a really good one.
Okay, well, let's move into the 5 biggest misconceptions about digital transformation. So I kind of want to read these to you and get your reaction, and then dig into a few just like we did with the other article. So the first misconception is you do it, then it's done. The second misconception is it's all about technology. the third misconception, and I kind of want to dig into this one with you a little bit because it's not something we talk about a ton, but we have touched on it. Digital transformation is only for big business. And this profile says, that simply isn't true. Many small to medium sized business can be missing out on technologies because they believe technology is too expensive or digital transformation are too time intensive. They don't have the ability to do that as a small to mid-sized organization. So what would you say to that?
Well, I agree with that. I think it's not. Well, I agree with the counterpoint that it is not just about uh, big business. I think if you think about it, a smaller or a mid-sized organization is more ripe for digital transformation, partially because they are typically more able to consume technology and change than a big, larger, more mature organization. So if you're a younger, less mature, and smaller organization, you're probably going to have not an easy time, but an easier time deploying new technologies. And it's going to be a lot easier to start deploying technology now versus trying to wait until you're a lot bigger, at which point it's going to just be more resistance and more baggage and more people that are set in their ways and operations that are already baked into the DNA of the company. So if you can get ahead of that curve and deploy technology and start using technology at a younger age as an organization or at a smaller point in your growth cycle, it's actually longer term going to be more effective. And the other thing too is that there's so many technologies out there now that are cost effective for small and mid-sized organizations. I'd say maybe 30 years ago, what you said is true, might have been true, which is that smaller organizations weren't really cut out for digital transformation, say 30 years ago. But now there's just so many good cost-effective technologies out there that are right-sized for smaller organizations that you're missing out if you're not looking at ways to automate your business.
Yeah, and the partner support, those tier two SIs and all of those different kind of smaller implementation partners, those exist now in niche areas. So that's one of the pieces that sometimes it's better to be a big fish in a small pond, if you will.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. That's a great point too. It's the implementation ecosystem is more friendly to small and mid-sized companies compared to back in the day.
And if you are a small to mid-sized business or SMB, as we call them a lot of times, on our YouTube channel, we have an entire playlist on what that looks like as far as software selection, implementation, even family-owned businesses. We actually have a specialist or a specialty team here that actually looks at those SMBs. So if you have more questions about that, head on over to that channel. So the fourth one is you have to follow all of the latest technology trends. And I think this is interesting how they put this timeline out there. So a couple of years back, everyone was talking about blockchain. Last year, the hottest buzzword was metaverse. And as far as 2023, it's undoubtedly been the year of the AI and generative AI tools, predominantly ChatGPT. So if you were to go back and implement each one of these technologies, you probably have a mess of a technology stack now as an enterprise business. And I think that's so interesting, and the importance of understanding that new technologies and trends aren't always the best way to achieve your business or technical objectives. So what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. You mentioned metaverse. I think that's a great example of one that hasn't really gained the traction that I thought it would have. I would have thought by now we'd see more of a closer alignment with mainstream reality. It hasn't really gotten there, despite the big investments from the company Meta and Mark Zuckerberg's former Facebook company. It just doesn't seem to be gaining that sort of traction in mainstream business world. So using that as an example, if you had doubled down and gone all in on that emerging tech, you might have wasted a lot of money there. And some organizations may have already wasted a lot of money there. It may still become mainstream adopted in the future, but it's just not there yet. So I think that's a good reminder of like just all the noise in the technology space. It's just constantly going to be changing. The backdrop's going to be shifting. Industry analysts are going to be coming up with new buzzwords and new big things that you can certainly educate yourself on and be aware of, but you don't want to jump too quickly to embrace these technologies unless it's just a really good fit for you. And I think that's the key, is to recognize who you are as an organization, what you're trying to accomplish, and then figure out which technology or technologies best fit that model going forward, regardless of whether or not it's the next big thing or the next big sexy technology or not. It's just a matter of finding the technology roadmap that's the best for you.
Most definitely. And number 5 on this list is replacing humans with technology, which I know we talk a lot about. There may be changes in those roles and responsibilities, but there's always going to need to be some sort of human intervention. And those automations hopefully can be seen as opportunities to get rid of those manual tasks. So if you were to pick a number 6 misconception about digital transformation that wasn't on this list, what would it be?
That's a great question. Those are really good ones. I mean, the 5 you mentioned are really good. I'd say maybe a 6th one would be misconception would be that you can outsource your digital transformation. So in other words, you can hire a big system integrator or a big consulting firm, and they will come in and handle the entire transformation for you. That's a misconception that isn't true, especially in the long term. Organizations need to look at how they can better have ownership and better manage the project and manage the system integrator and the consultants rather than consultants managing them. So I think that'd be a close 6th that I might add to the list.
Well, great. Well, I want to turn the audience for a minute. If you had to pick a 6 or maybe number 7 at this point, misconceptions about digital transformation, if you pop that in the comments, we'd be excited to kind of look at those next episode. So, but definitely a good list, a solid list for sure, and important to kind of remember and go through that skill set planning when looking at going through any sort of technology implementation.
Yeah, agreed. Those are really good ones. So thank you for sharing that. And we're going to keep going with that thread of misconceptions and IT leadership lessons and that sort of thing. When we bring on our next guest, we're going to have Dean Sam on the show coming up next. He is a director at Third Stage Consulting Asia Pacific. He helps our clients in the Asia Pacific region through their digital transformations. And he's going to be on talking about lessons from complex digital transformations. And in that conversation, we will inevitably get to some misconceptions around the digital transformation space as well. And then later in the show, after Dean is on, we will also have Kyler and I doing a comparison of Oracle ERP Cloud versus Microsoft Dynamics 365. So be sure to stick around for that. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more Transformation Ground Control.
Could you whisper in my ear the things you want to feel? I'll give you anything.
Interested in working for a company that truly values your unique skills and experience? Here at Third Stage, we don't hire based on resumes alone. We look at the full candidate, experience, and willingness to provide excellent service for our clients. Within a technology, independent, and agnostic consulting firm, you have the opportunity to learn across industries with a diverse group of clients. Our consultants also have the opportunity to diversify their portfolio and learn across technology systems. If you're interested in joining a high-growth entrepreneurial organization, please reach out to us at work@thirdstage-consulting.com.
Anything you ever dreamed to be complete. Yes, pieces of nothing that fall.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 129. My name is Eric Kimberling here with Kyler Cheatham from Third Stage Consulting Group. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and audio podcast platforms throughout the world. I'm excited for our next guest, Dean Sam, who is part of our Third Stage Consulting Asia Pacific team. He's based out of Hong Kong, joining us here from Australia here today while he's traveling, as am I, by the way. I'm also traveling, not in Australia, but I am traveling. Hence the unusual background and lack of professional audio here today. But Dean's going to be on talking about lessons from complex digital transformations. He's worked with a lot of different organizations throughout the world, a lot of companies of varying sizes and complexity and industries and geographies and whatnot. So I thought it'd be good to do a flyover view of what are some of those lessons from some of these more complex organizations that he's worked with over the years. So all that being said, Dean, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Eric. Nice to be here. It's been a while. I haven't done one of these live streams. I think the last one was over a year ago. So thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. It's been too long since you've been on, so it's good to have you back on, and I especially appreciate you being on here today. At the time we're filming this discussion here, I'm on the east coast of the United States, and you're in Australia, so our time differences here cannot be much different. So I appreciate you being up in the middle of the night, your time, to have this conversation. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So, so just to get started, I guess it's you have a really interesting background and upbringing in the digital transformation space. Maybe just tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about who you are and how you what do you do, and we'll get into some of the how you got started in this world of digital transformation here in a minute. But maybe just tell us about yourself to get started.
Yeah. So how should I start? So, well, I'm originally from Canada. That's where I grew up. I graduated from university there, and I decided to right after graduation, I decided to move to Asia basically, and I went to China because I wanted to learn Mandarin. I couldn't speak Mandarin before that, and because at the time China, or it still is, but at the time China was booming economically, and thinking maybe that's the new gold rush basically in the world, and a lot of young professionals were flooding there, and hoping to start their career. So I went there without any expectations. I first wanted to learn the language, and then I got into and then started my career. I enjoyed China. I enjoyed Asia, what it had to offer, and so I have a degree in engineering, mostly engineering, and so I worked in consulting. I also worked on the operational side, in the manufacturing industry. And while working in the manufacturing industry, I've led a few ERP implementations in the organization that was in, and notably, I led the ERP implementation in Bangladesh. So I actually lived and worked in Bangladesh for 7 years for several organizations, and Bangladesh being a developing country. That's where I got my feet wet in digital transformation, and most notably in ERP implementations. And I had to wear many hats being in Bangladesh, whether it was a project program manager, a project sponsor, a business analyst, whatsoever. So I've gone through the whole, I would say, digital enablement methodology in organization, by building a strategy, by evaluating and selecting the right solution, negotiating with the vendors, preparing the organization, doing the change management, setting up the right processes, setting up the right people in the right roles in order to make technology work for those companies, implementing it, doing the go live, and so forth. And to be honest, I didn't have much support from seniors to tell me what to do or to guide me. I had to learn on the spot and on my own, really.
On the job training.
Yeah, on the job training, and that's how I got to meet you, really, Eric, and learning about your lessons learned, listening to your own podcasts. So it's quite surreal that I'm actually one of your guests now, many years later, and and your YouTube clips and so forth, and that gave me a number of pointers in certain areas of the digital transformation journey, and that helped me actually be successful in implementing those systems. And not to brag or anything, but it's just we've implemented several systems, whether it's a big one like an ERP or smaller bolt-on solutions, and those systems worked at the end of the day. And so I've built sort of my I guess my methodology, my own process in getting these systems implemented, and 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 now I'm part of the third stage family, and trying to adopt those, that my experience in other organizations.
Right. Yeah, it's an interesting background. I mean, you've got certainly the multinational component covered well. Canada, Hong Kong, China, Bangladesh. You're in Australia visiting one of our clients right now. You mentioned before we went live, so you definitely have that global footprint or that global experience base that is so rich with experience and lessons learned. So look forward to chatting through some of those lessons, and just to speaking of international, looking to our audience and where everyone's joining from today, just a few examples of where else in the world others are joining from. We have Dennis from Cochin, India, Ryan from Denver, Colorado, Dan from Naples, Florida, Megan from South Carolina, Prab from Austin, Steve from Los Angeles, Wendy from Mexico, someone from Rostock, Germany, someone from Biden, UK. So or Biden is from the UK, I should say. His name is Biden, and he's joining us from the UK. So a lot of global representation in terms of just a few examples there of where people are joining from. So thank you for being here. So you started to allude to this a little bit, Dean. You talked about your journey. Starting off younger, earlier in life in Canada, and then moving over to Asia and having different experiences throughout Asia. How did you start to get involved in digital transformations? It sounds like maybe it was unplanned. It wasn't part of your master plan was to become a digital transformation consultant, or was it? Or how did you end up falling into this?
Well, first thing is I feel I have I guess a skill. Some people are good at are better at some tasks or some activity than others. One area that I thought I sort of excelled at is organizing information, basically. And actually, it started with my first experience, my first company where I worked in. It was a consulting firm. It was actually a procurement service provider back in Shanghai, and the partners of that company, they were seasoned consultants, and they were ex consultants from Accenture and Bain and Booz Allen and so forth, and then they started this consulting firm, and I started out as just an intern, and then became an analyst and so forth. And so they had different they had a clear process in terms of how they roll out their methodology and their offerings, and they had a lot of tools, right, to support those offerings. And after a couple of years on the job, I went through the whole end-to-end process of what the company offers, and then I started organizing all their tools, standardizing, whatever it might be, their Excel tools or their emails, their PowerPoint reports and so forth. And then I embedded those into their process. So it was a clear cut kind of way of doing things, and it was very much standardized, and that was applied to all their offices globally. And that was 15 years ago, and I could say they're still following exactly that same standardized process in those standardized tools. So it's not related to actual implementing an actual technology, but it's just the fact of the ability to organize information in an efficient way, so others can use it, right? Can profit from it, and it makes their way of working much simpler. So that was a first successful step. I said, all right, so it looks like I'm good in putting information together. And then I moved into more in the manufacturing and operational role, and I implemented an ERP, JD Edwards, in a factory in Bangladesh. And and same kind of mindset. I was able to to design, you can say, the right information structure in order to link, demand to material planning, to production planning, to production execution, and all the way down, up to inventory and shipping. So that was a second, I guess, second experience that was fruitful and got me into a role of a head of ERP implementation for another organization. And in that organization, the key thing was what I learned about, especially in the ERP space, because that's more my experience lies in there, is by achieving better planning for different organizations. And what we see in many of our clients, the type of planning they do is very reactive and short term, right? But if you want to implement a robust technology, you need to have a longer view of your business. So you need to have a longer planning horizon. And so setting up, whether it's you have a 2-week planning horizon, but you have to move up to a monthly and a quarterly and the yearly planning, and that can be achieved through that new technology. But that requires a change in how the company thinks and how the company uses information in order to plan on the longer term basis. Right.
And in your description of your background, and that's really interesting, by the way, of how you ended up in this industry and in this role. I've yet to meet anyone that had a plan from childhood. They knew when they were a kid that they wanted to be a digital transformation or ERP consultant. I've yet to meet anyone that had that part of their master plan. It seems like we all sort of had detours and sort of fell into the space based on opportunity and growth. But you've worked with a lot of different organizations, ranging in size from small to mid-sized companies to large multinational organizations. Both as a consultant, but also earlier in your career before you became a consultant, you were working for some larger organizations. When you think about larger or more complex organizations, whether it's complex because it's multinational or complex because of its size or because of the scope of what the business does, what are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned over the years as it relates to managing change and managing transformation in these more complex organizations? What are some of the nuances that you've learned over the years?
Well, I'm basing myself on the experience that I've gotten and what I see works. When we're talking about global multinational organizations with offices around the globe or manufacturing sites across the globe, I think one key foundational piece is to have more of a centralized control of your digital team, right? Instead of having too much of a decentralized kind of IT or ERP teams across different sites. It needs to be centralized. I believe so. So one of the companies that I worked in, they had a large business analyst, ERP business analyst team in their head office, and whether they would roll out a system in another site in another country, or is it because of a mergers and acquisition activity? So they had to roll out their system in that other entity. It always was done from a centralized ERP team, because and then from there, when you have that, then your master data is also run by a centralized group, right? So consistency of data, the data sets that are being deployed, the attributes that are being deployed, the data structures are all consistent across the global company. And thirdly, once you have consistent data, you can have consistent planning processes running through it. So you can have, let's say, the mother office or the central office, the central planning office can run SNOP at a global level, right? And then you could have regional planning office that would take that SNOP output and then drive the master production scheduling. And then you had more on the site level that could drive MRP and shop floor control. And then the regional, you can either do it at the site. Distribution planning, you could either do it at the site or at the regional level, depending on what you'd like to do. So looking at those planning levels, you could achieve those planning levels even for complex and global organizations if your data system basically is being there's some oversight. There's oversight from a central point of view.
We're here with Dean Sam from Third Stage Consulting's Asia Pacific office talking about lessons from complex digital transformations. We've got a lot more to cover. We'll be right back. We're going to take a quick break.
When things are big that should be small, who can tell what magic spells will be doing?
Are you looking to stay ahead of the curve in the ever-changing landscape of digital transformation? Then you need our newly released 2023 Digital Transformation Report. This comprehensive report covers the latest trends, technologies, and strategies to ensure your digital transformation is optimized for success. The 2023 Digital Transformation Report is packed full of proven methodologies and insights from experts in the independent digital transformation field. You'll also receive practical insights on how to implement digital transformation strategies within your unique organization. This free report is available for download on our website at thirdstage-consulting.com under our Thought Leadership section.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 129. My name is Eric Kimberling here with Kylo Cheatham. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, as well as audio podcast platforms throughout the world. We're here in the midst of a conversation with Dean Sam from the Third Stage Consulting Asia Pacific office, talking about some lessons from complex digital transformations. Let's jump back into the conversation. It's interesting hearing you say that. I agree with everything you just said. I think that centralization and having that consistency of processes and focus on data management, things like that, everything you just described is very important, especially for larger, more complex multinational organizations. However, it also runs counter to some of the conventional wisdom or some of the emerging thinking in the market, which is we should do more agile sorts of implementations. We should be more decentralized. We should have flat organizations. And, so there's some sort of business trends or movements, the opposite direction of what you're describing. How do you reconcile that? I mean, do you see that sort of a conflict between conventional thinking or emerging thinking and how things should be versus the way things actually work and are most effective? Or what are your thoughts?
I sort of, how can I say, put aside that kind of those buzzwords in terms of how to deploy technology, like agile or lean or whatnot. You know what? I just first is set up your design, and your design needs to be clear end to end, and it's not about just having a overall to-be process design, but it's looking at the actual data sets that sit under those processes, sit under those activities, making sure your data set is standardized, is robust, meaning it's robust, it can meet all the possible business scenarios that your company has to go through, whether it's selling an item, the different type of sales scenarios that can go through, whether the different making sure it goes through the let's say the supply chain. So all the scenarios. So you have to cover all of that, and that has to be put on paper first, and you have to cover the whole gamut of business scenarios and making sure your data structure can support that. And if it cannot support that, then you revise your data structure. You have to add a field because you have to meet a certain scenario. So that's how you have to build it. And from my experience, if you don't do that readiness, right, you're not going to get the full functionality of the system. Because if you didn't lay out all the scenarios and the data sets that support it, then you cannot connect the dots in terms of how you can build automation through the solution, because your data set isn't robust enough to do so.
Right. Yeah, that's well said. And I think you use the word setting aside buzzwords and trends. I think that's a really important point because there's certain trends and buzzwords that may apply to you as an organization, and there's many that won't. And so you have to really see past that in your business and what you're trying to accomplish.
I look at the agile kind of way of doing things. That could work if you're developing apps, right? You're developing certain programs, but in our case, we're not developing programs for the sake of ease of messaging or shopping or whatever. It's actually, we have to run an organization, so you have to know your organization's requirements before. So you can't really go agile unless you have defined all your organization's requirements, or else what can happen is actually the new system that's coming in might be even worse than the system that the organization currently has, and then, and therefore where's your value after that? So the agile, I'm not a big fan.
You and I share that common that commonality for sure, among other things. But I'd be curious to hear from the audience. What do you think of agile, especially in complex, multinational, complex organizations? Do you think agile has a role? Do you think is it overrated? Is it something that has practical use? I'd love to hear the audience's comments here too, as we're chatting through it. And that's usually a controversial topic, so I like to ask it whenever we can. So I'd love to hear the audience's thoughts here too. So another thing that you and I share, in addition to our skepticism of agile, Dean, is that we also have I'd say we both have a shared skepticism for general tech trends and you mentioned buzzwords, but just talking about technical trends, and tell me a little bit about your thoughts of trends in the marketplace in terms of technology trends and sort of how it fits into the realities of what organizations should be doing in their digital transformation.
Well, in order to become more optimal in how to plan and manage a business, I don't think adding new trendy technology is the way to go. It's about, in order for technology to work, because technology is only good if it works, right? So you have to look internally in the organization. Where is the organization at in terms of their digital mindset? And is that digital mindset available across the company, top down, right? And what I focus on is enabling that digital mindset in the organization. So can companies or anyone or key people in the organization, can they take a process that the company is currently using or it's part of their working process? Can they translate that on pen and paper in terms of data structure and data flow? If the company can achieve that, then we're able to implement new technologies, first of all. Because if it doesn't work on pen and paper, and it's not robust enough, and it doesn't meet the end-to-end process, then you have a problem, because it won't work work when you're implementing a solution or a program. So and when we're talking about agile and all that earlier, how I approach implementing a solution is really, it's like I take an engineering point of view. It's like building a bridge, right? You're not gonna go on and agilely build a bridge, right? You gotta build your blueprint. You gotta make sure your blueprint meets all the environmental conditions. You have to do force testing across every part of the bridge. Make sure it can support the load that's required. And to do that, you got to do that on pen and paper first, and get agreement across the organization that that's the best way to go. And that's part of the readiness piece that we often do with our clients before they actually invite or ask the solution integrator to come in and start rolling out the solution.
Yeah, absolutely. And you look at, you mentioned, for example, that you've been implementing technology for a long time. You talked about JD Edwards, and you've seen the evolution of technology over the years and some of the changes in technology. And I think that what's interesting is how fast technology changes and how much growth has happened in the technology space. But at the same time, organizations and their ability to change hasn't really kept up. So in other words, you have a company, if you're a company that you have enough trouble just implementing a basic GL system or a basic inventory management system, it's not going to do you any good to now try to pile on a bunch of other new technologies on top of that when you can't even get the basic fundamentals implemented well. So it's sort of like you have to learn to walk before you run with a lot of these tech trends.
Yeah, it's like playing any sport, right? Let's take tennis, for example. The new system or the new technology could be a new racket, right? Or another bolt-on that you like to add, or another add-on. Those are your tennis shoes. But if the player isn't ready for the match, and he's not in good shape, his footwork is weak, his technique is weak, his serve is weak, what's the point? What's the point in buying all that equipment if you can't use it? And that's really the analogy that I have with technology and organization is focus on the player, right? Focus on the player. Do you have the right fitness level? Do you have the right technique? Do you have the right mentality to play a tennis match and to go through the grind and all that? We focus on that. And then once the player is strong enough, regardless of what technology you choose, the player will adapt to it.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, great analogy.
If I buy racket brand A or racket brand B, but I'm a solid tennis player, I'll still do well on the tennis court.
Right. No, that's a great point. And the focus becomes on becoming a great tennis player versus which racket am I going to use or which ball do I prefer, and that sort of thing. Yeah. So here's an interesting question from Irina on YouTube, and the question that Irina has is, how do you build teams for a new ERP implementation? So you've been involved with a lot of our clients in helping them do this and helping them through the implementations. But what advice do you give to an organization that's trying to build their internal digital mindset, as you mentioned before, but also, how do they structure that team, or what are some tips to structure that team to help them through the transformation?
If I had to choose one role that I feel it's critical in order for organizations to really take ownership and to to be in control of their digital transformation journey, is the role of a business analyst, internal business analyst, not outside business analysts like consultants coming in, but organizations, business analysts who, number one, they need to understand business management best practices, right? Because best practices for me, it's a good starting point, because already that sets the right foundation in terms of what information you require in order to run a process, or how information should be structured. Take, for example, like in a manufacturing organization, we talk a lot about bill of materials, MRP, inventory. So in that's to achieve MRP. So those best practices of having proper inventory control and adequate bill of materials, those are certain best practice that needs to the business analyst should know about, first of all. And then the business analysts should be able to design really new processes, right? Improve to-be processes, and also design data structures. Improve your data structure to meet those those different business processes. So because they're the ones who are the ones who are going to connect between, let's say, your system integrator and the organization. And because during the implementation, you want to, of course, the employees in the organizations, they will be involved. They'll have key roles as super users or process leads and whatnot. But you don't want to take too much of their time. Let the business analysts take the load in the implementation to be the facilitator between the business members and the consultants. And the business analysts will be the ones during implementation who would develop the processes. So you're not wasting. So you're not spending too much money for the SIs to do that. Number one. Number two is for all the data cleansing, the testing, and then troubleshooting. You have that layer of business analysts to support the business team.
Right. We're here with Dean Sam from Third Stage Consulting's Asia Pacific office, talking about lessons from complex digital transformations. We've got a lot more to cover. We'll be right back. We're going to take a quick break.
Just tell me what you've got to say to me. I've been waiting for so long to hear.
If you are aiming for transformation success, turn to Third Stage Consulting Group. Third Stage's independent and technology-agnostic consulting team helps clients define their digital strategies, define their roadmaps, and manage their transformations. With offices in the US, Europe, and Australia, our team helps the world's most forward-thinking organizations through their transformation pitfalls and risks. If you are embarking on a digital transformation or business change initiative, contact Third Stage Consulting to see how we can help you reach the third stage of transformation success. Learn more about us and download independent reports, videos, and other best practices at thirdstageconsulting.com.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 129. My name is Eric Kimberling, here with Kyler Cheatham. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, as well as audio podcast platforms throughout the world. We're here in the midst of a conversation with Dean Sam from the Third Stage Consulting Asia Pacific office, talking about some lessons from complex digital transformations. Let's jump back into the conversation. Good way to think about building these competencies internally. You certainly want to leverage outside consulting help and that outside experience that you don't have, but you also don't want to be so dependent on outside consultants that you sort of create that learned helplessness. You want to be able to start to build that competency in-house so that you can own this longer term.
Right, and they will get the full-on knowledge transfer from the SIs on the actual back end of the solution. So if we are to improve certain configurations that's required in the system, or actually build certain customization because for certain areas, or to build APIs and connect other solutions, they will have that knowledge to do so. So you don't need to always ask for outside consultants to do that work. So you've built that internal capable team to support the business moving forward.
Right. Yeah. Makes total sense. Here's an interesting comment from Megan on LinkedIn. Megan says, as a new digital transformation consultant, these analogies and examples are so helpful. So I'm glad this is helping you, Megan, and hopefully it's helping other people listening in as well. Um, Here's an interesting question from Ryan on LinkedIn. I'll see if I can show the entire comment. It'll hide our faces for a moment, but we can see it here. Ryan says, how do you resolve issues where the executive team is forcing a system that may not be the right fit for a company, especially when the rest of the company sees the issues and voices their concern ahead of time? And maybe I'll broaden that question a little bit to say, what are some tips you would have for companies to overcome resistance to change in general, whether it's because they don't like the new system that's being deployed, or maybe there's just certain parts of it they don't like, or challenges they see in the changes that are going to be driven through the organization. How do you deal with that, or what are some advice you give?
Well, when we talk about the executive team, we need to often we shouldn't focus too much. We should articulate this technology problem in a way that the executive team, the general public can understand. And when we work with executives and when we to choose the right solution or to change a solution, often on part of our methodology at Third Stage APAC is to first is to understand what the executives team wants out of the business, what they want to do, basically, whether it's with technology or without technology, what they want to do in the future. So what are their requirements, what they want to control, what do they want to manage? And then we build what we call functional architecture. And the functional architecture are basically based on their requirements. What are the modules and high level functionalities that the new technology should have, right? So you have so the functional architecture is how you articulate business requirements and technology. It's that middle ground. It's that binding point. Okay. And then from there, once everyone agrees on this is the functional architecture that we need, so that becomes your shopping list, basically, right? It's your shopping list. I need my butter. I need my milk. I need my cereal. But then you go to then when you start looking at what's available in the market, then you look at the different brands. So you can choose from different brands to meet the items of your shopping list, and then you start evaluating which brand or which system brand best meets that functional architecture or that area of that functional architecture, that module, and so forth. So, and then that's where you can create alignment across the organization, because first the organization sees, okay, we're working on the same song sheet, which is the functional architecture. Then we can start evaluating which solution best meets that functional architecture.
Right. So it's sort of getting the buy or the input and involvement from the team in creating that future state, or that functional architecture of what the future is going to look like, and that's one way to overcome that resistance, and also to make sure that you choose the right system that best fits the organization and what the needs are.
Yeah. And the functional architecture, I think that's an extremely important exercise before actually even meeting or talking to salespeople for any solution, because that sets, again, like I was saying, that sets your shopping list, and you're making sure that you're not buying too much,
right,
or not enough. But usually, oftentimes, companies buy too much, and when it's time to implement, we weren't ready for it. We didn't, or they question, why did we buy this in the first place? Right. And that falls on the wayside, and it's not being used.
Yeah, taking your analogy one step further, your shopping list analogy. If you create your shopping list while you're starving, you haven't eaten all day. You create your shopping list, you're probably going to over purchase. You're going to buy more than you need because you're just hungry, and it turns out maybe you can't eat all that stuff that you buy, and it's the same sort of thing with technology too. So
create a shopping list that satisfies your needs first, right? Not just pile on of what would you like to have.
Right. Yeah, exactly. What about when defining a digital strategy? Here's a question from Kyler as it relates to digital strategy. But what are your thoughts on customization in your digital strategy? Can you over customize? And I'm not sure if she means the strategy, customizing the strategy itself, or customizing technology within that strategy. So I'm not 100% clear on which angle. But what is sort of your knee jerk reaction to that, or what are your thoughts?
Well, if it's customizing digital strategy, of course, the digital strategy has to be developed as per the organizational needs and what the executives require. In terms of customizing technology, usually customizing will have your data structure, and then you have to customize it. You have to build a source or certain script to add on more information, so that so can be rolled. Ideally, in order to avoid, that's the plan, is again to have that full data structure. And it's just a database, just a table with rows, and you're not limited many fields you want. At the end of the day, it can be as big as you want to meet the needs of the business. So if you set that up properly and you have that robust data structure from the get-go, your level of customization will diminish. So that's where and that's where you leverage the configuration of the solution.
Right. Now there's actually a few questions we're getting here that are more, I'd say, career related questions, but so I'll pick one here that I think is maybe a good broad overview here. But this is from Aditola on LinkedIn, and Aditola asked the question: how does one begin a career in digital transformation? What are your thoughts, or what advice would you give to someone who is just getting started in digital transformation or would like to be a consultant? What advice would you offer?
My advice is to have actual operational experience in an organization, not necessarily that's a track that I took, and that helped me. Before going into a consultancy, it's good that you have experience in actually using a digital solution or business management solution, whether you're in sales, working, or in marketing, working on the CRM. So learn that CRM in the ins and out, and see what's available, and improve how your organization is using that system and leveraging it to the maximum, and improving the processes, improving the data structure that sits under that in your organization. So that's one avenue. Okay, so become a specialist in the system that your company is currently using. Number two is, if you're in your company, there is an opportunity to be part of a project team to implement a new solution. Jump on that right away. Apply for that role. Okay, because you're going to get practical experience in implementing a solution. And so if you have one or both of those experiences, then I feel you have a strong track record to get into consultancy, because then you become a credible consultant in front of potential clients, because you've gone through the trenches in using solutions and improving them, or even implementing solutions.
Right. Yeah, that's great advice. We're here with Dean Sam from Third Stage Consulting's Asia Pacific office, talking about lessons from complex digital transformations. We've got a lot more to cover. We'll be right back. We're going to take a quick break.
Interested in working for a company that truly values your unique skills and experience? Here at Third Stage, we don't hire based on resumes alone. We look at the full candidate, experience, and willingness to provide excellent service for our clients. Within a technology, independent, and agnostic consulting firm, you have the opportunity to learn across industries with a diverse group of clients. Our consultants also have the opportunity to diversify their portfolio and learn across technology systems. If you're interested in joining a high-growth entrepreneurial organization, please reach out to us at work@thirdstage-consulting.com.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 129. My name is Eric Kimberling here with Kyler Cheatham. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, as well as audio podcast platforms throughout the world. We're here in the midst of a conversation with Dean Sam from the Third Stage Consulting Asia Pacific office, talking about some lessons from complex digital transformations. Let's jump back into the conversation. What are some of the biggest, maybe just at a high level, we could have spent the whole hour talking about this one question, so we'll try to maybe summarize what we might have covered in more detail. But how would you summarize some of the biggest challenges that our clients struggle with when they're going through digital transformations, whether they're big, complex organizations, a smaller, mid-sized company that's less complex? What are some of those, major pitfalls or challenges that you see clients struggle with?
I would say, I guess prior to implementation of a solution, there's this readiness phase that we suggest that the companies go through before bringing in, consultants from the system integrator, and they start, mapping out your business and seeing and implementing the solution based on that mapping, because oftentimes that mapping is often based on the as is of the solution, because consultants who are implementing solutions, they don't have time, and I understand them, because their job is to implement solution at customer sites, is to develop a new structure, a new way of thinking, or new way of operating for the client. And oftentimes it's taking what you have in current data sets, what you have in current processes, and make that happen in that new technology. So a thorough readiness stage for change management and for to be process design and to be data structure, I believe is critical. Because we were talking about planning earlier, right? We want to improve, we want to have better planning across the organization from long-term to short-term. Yes, the system will help you plan, but you need to have good planners in the company, right? And what we see, maybe the planners are not at that moment when the planners in organizations that we work, maybe they're not up to the mark. So you need to upgrade their skill set, right? Or you need to find more experienced planners too. So because they understand the role of information and having information coming in, so and then lay out what type of information they need to be shown on their interface, so they can make the best informed decisions. So it's developing that digital and also that planning mindset before going into implementation. So that readiness phase is critical.
Right. Yeah, that makes total sense. And maybe you may have a similar answer for my last question I have for you here today, Dean. It's somewhat related to what I just asked you, but I'll ask it maybe a little bit different to see if it stimulates any other thoughts. But what closing advice would you leave with someone, an organization or a team, that's about to begin their digital transformation journey? What are some of those tips that you would say, do these 2 or 3 things to get started?
2 to 3 things to get started. Well, you need to have. Well, first of all, your executive team needs to be on board, right? If they're in the bleachers and just looking at the match in front of them and not being involved, then you've got a problem, right? But if the executive team is taking ownership, they're taking leadership, they want to get involved, they want to know what's happening, that's already a first sign. So that executive buy-in, but also active participation is very important. And number 2 is make sure you have your business analysts in place. And how you structure your business analysts, usually you have, you can break down the organization in key functional departments or functional processes, whether it's finance and costing, manufacturing, supply chain, demand planning. So you have business analysts that are covering those key elements of the organizations, and they're building the processes and the data structure for those for those parts of the business. And then when it's comes to do the planning, because that's where demand planning needs to connect with material planning. So you've set up those processes in those separate areas, and then planning is really where it's the meeting of the minds, right? It's the meeting of the information. So that's the beauty of information design. So how do we put demand planning and material planning together, and then you develop your planning structure? So you need to have those business analysts sitting. You need to have enough business analysts covering the whole spectrum of the organization.
Yeah, makes total sense. Those are good ideas or good tidbits and tips to get started on a transformation.
Yeah, very simple. I in my view, it's it's a tennis player, right?
Right.
If you don't train hard enough and you're not practicing enough, you're not going to get ready for the match. You're not going to get ready. You're not going to be ready for the tournament. And it's there's no silver bullet. And that magical racket is not going to make you win the match or not. It's definitely not going to make you win the tournament. So you got to work on yourself. You got to work on your and building your skills, your own skill set.
Yeah, building your skill set and having a plan, a training plan, and a vision for what it is you're trying to accomplish, and all that good stuff. So good. Well, I appreciate all the great advice and tips you've shared here today, Dean. And I think a lot of these tips and talking points we've talked through here today are relevant for complex organizations, larger organizations, but also just any organization that's going through change. Hopefully this has provided some guidance and things to think about as you're going through transformation. So maybe just to close then, in closing, just tell us a little bit about, you're part of Third Stage Consulting Asia Pacific. So you work with a lot of our clients there in the Asia Pacific region. You also work with Wayne Holtham, who Wayne's been on the show as well, and he's been in many of our videos and YouTube channel content and whatnot. How can people connect with you and learn more about Third Stage Consulting Asia Pacific, or and I'll talk about how they can learn about Third Stage in general, but how can they learn more about you and about Third Stage APAC?
Well, if any of you are thinking or planning a digital transformation initiative, looking at other solutions, we'd be happy to have a chat and to hear what you're going through. And you can contact me over email. I think that's the best way. It's dean.sam@thirdstage-consulting.com. Myself and my partner Wayne, who is based out of Australia, we'll be happy to speak to you and hear what you're going through. And there's no commitment whatsoever. We'll be happy to just have a call, and hopefully we can get to know your business, and we can maybe guide you in the right direction, depending on where you are on your journey.
All right. Thank you, Dean. Great conversation. Good to have you on the show. I really appreciate you being up super late at night, your time, to film this conversation. So thank you for that. We've got a lot more to cover, some debrief or things we want to debrief from that conversation. But before we do that, we'll take a quick break. You're listening to Transformation Ground Control.
If you are involved in any sort of digital transformation or business change initiative, you will want to download the 2021 Digital Transformation Report. With its comprehensive overview of business and technology trends and best practices, this report is a must-have guide for any transformation project or executive team. Download this free report by visiting Third Stage Consulting at thirdstage-consulting.com. You can also visit our website to learn more about us, or download independent reports, videos, and other best practices. Again, visit thirdstage-consulting.com today to learn how to take your transformation to the third stage of success.
I'm gonna leave it all out there tonight. I'm gonna leave it all out there.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 129, where you can find new episodes every Wednesday on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, as well as audio podcast platforms throughout the world. And Kyler, we just had this conversation with Dean talking about complex digital transformations and some of the lessons from those transformations. What were some of your thoughts and takeaways from that conversation?
Well, Dean is one of the most interesting people on the third stage team, in my opinion. He has such a diverse background, which he kind of shared. And it's funny because I asked him one time to look over some of our thought leadership materials that we had translated in Mandarin. Since he knows the language, a lot of times we'll reach out to our global team and say, does this translation make sense, or is this valuable, so that we can make sure that we're putting, high quality content in the marketplace. But he actually told me, he's like, I speak Mandarin, but I wouldn't be great at editing it, but I can do it in French. And I was like, what? So, because, he's Canadian, French is his first language. So he just, he has such a diversity to how he understands that. And that really translates to his project management work and his PMO work, because he is able to understand complex organizations across cultural lines, which is, such an asset to a business, especially a larger, more complex one that may have manufacturing hubs in all different areas of the world and is going through a larger multi-layer organizational change. So he just brings so much to the table in understanding that. He's a unicorn of some sorts.
He really is, yeah, in terms of cultural understanding of different cultures and languages, and also just different types of businesses too, different industries and whatnot. So there's a lot of diversity in his background for sure.
Yeah, and I love how he always kind of goes back to basics. When we touch on things like emerging technologies and, similar to how our conversation in our Hot Topics segment, of going back to what does your standardization data set looks like? What are those areas in which you have kind of that phase 0 initiatives in which you need to set the foundation for a successful digital transformation? We have a lot of clients that come to us that kind of want to run before they walk type of approach. And he's so good at kind of tailoring back, like, what is our checklist to make sure that all of these different strategic initiatives are in place so that we can leverage and maximize the value of the technology, which is why I think it's so funny, always the kind of the agile conversation and how always that kind of triggers this huge conversation. But I love his thoughts on the build the bridge with an agile approach. Like, that's terrifying to me. Like, it invokes fear into my, like, you would never, he's so right. You would never not have a blueprint, a standardized plan, testing to build a bridge in which people drive or walk over. So I thought that was a really interesting analogy.
I love the tennis analogy too.
Mm-hmm.
As far as you wouldn't focus primarily on what kind of racket you're using. You would focus on conditioning and training and just getting better at your game. And yeah, you want a better racket, but that's not your main focus.
Yeah, not needed. The tools are, more of an enhancement, but the behaviors and processes are really the foundation to making sure that that technology is leveraged. I also thought it was really interesting that he talked about the business analyst piece of kind of the roles and responsibilities, and the real kind of heartbeat of the IT team was that business analyst that was able to understand the data, but also the business objectives. And that's not a role we talk about a ton, but I do think it's so important. In my career, business analysts are like the bread and butter because they give you all of the data in a digestible manner so you can make smart strategic decisions. So I thought it was really cool that he highlighted that.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. It was interesting because usually when you ask that question, a lot of times people start with the project manager or executive sponsor or whatever. So it's interesting to hear his emphasis on business analyst. And I think it is probably is one of those more underrated roles too that we don't talk a lot about or recognize how important that role is. But to Dean's point, it certainly is.
And it's a great entry level role. Going back to kind of the Q&A at the beginning of this episode, it's a great opportunity to kind of in any business understand how data is consumed and leveraged to make business decisions. So definitely, a great role that you could kind of jump into right out of school or training.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's a great way to dig in and really understand operations and business processes and technology as well.
Absolutely. Well, great conversation. And if you want more of Dean, you can go to our Third Stage YouTube channel for our Digital Stratosphere APAC playlist. He was a main keynote speaker for that, as well as Wayne, who is his partner that we all mentioned in that conversation. So definitely highly recommend their content. It's very dense, very technical, and has lots of really real world tactics, which they've utilized in their successful transformation projects.
Yeah, yeah, very good stuff, and great to have him on the show. We'll have to have him on again soon as well. So thanks again to Dean for being here today. Well, we've got another segment to shift gears to. We're going to do a bit of a comparison here, a comparison discussion of Oracle ERP Cloud versus Microsoft D365. And be sure to stick around for this part of the podcast. Certainly, if you're evaluating either or both of those technologies, you'll want to stick around. But even if you're not really interested in either Oracle or Microsoft as part of your digital transformation, it's helpful to hear the ways that you can compare the strengths and weaknesses of different systems. Even if you're looking at other types of technologies, or maybe you've already decided on the technology, it's a good framework to understand how to understand where the deficiencies and gaps are so that you can mitigate those risks. So be sure to stick around for that. So we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Kyler and I will dive into this comparison of Oracle ERP Cloud versus Microsoft D365. Be sure to stick around. We'll be right back. You're listening to Transformation Ground Control.
If you are aiming for transformation success, turn to Third Stage Consulting Group. Third Stage's independent and technology agnostic consulting team helps clients define their digital strategies, define their roadmaps, and manage their transformations. With offices in the US, Europe, and Australia, our team helps the world's most forward-thinking organizations through their transformation pitfalls and risks. If you are embarking on a digital transformation or business change initiative, contact Third Stage Consulting to see how we can help you reach the third stage of transformation success. Learn more about us and download independent reports, videos, and other best practices at thirdstage-consulting.com.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 129. My name is Eric Kimberling here with Kyler Cheatham. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday. And we wanted to play you this clip of a YouTube video that Kyler and I created that's available on the Third Stage Consulting YouTube channel. But we wanted to play it for you here today because it's a comparison video that compares two leading systems in the marketplace. And those two systems are Oracle ERP Cloud and Microsoft D365. So reason we thought this would be helpful to play here today and discuss today is partially because so much of our audience is interested in evaluating potential technologies, but also because even ones that aren't interested in evaluating these two particular technologies might be interested in hearing how you should be thinking about some of the pros and cons and strengths and weaknesses of different technologies that you might be deploying in your organization. So I thought it'd be a good conversation from that perspective as well. So with that all being said, let's jump in and roll the clip of Kyler and I unpacking a comparison of Oracle ERP Cloud versus Microsoft D365.
Microsoft Dynamics 365 and Oracle ERP Cloud are two titans in the marketplace when it comes to large, complex ERP systems. These options are important to evaluate the unique needs of the organization versus the pros and cons to ensure you're selecting the software that's the best match for your business needs. I'm Kyler Cheatham with Third Stage Consulting Group. We are a global, independent, and technology agnostic advisory firm that helps our clients achieve the third stage of digital transformation. Our support includes helping them choose the best software that meets the needs of their organization and will achieve their objectives as a business. In this video, we are going to compare Microsoft Dynamics 365 versus Oracle ERP Cloud. To kick this off, I want to play you a clip of an independent and completely technology agnostic review of Microsoft Dynamics 365 that was crafted by our founder and CEO, Eric Kimberling.
So to fully understand what D365 is, it helps to look at the history of Microsoft Dynamics and Dynamics 365. So about 20 years ago, when Microsoft started really pushing into the business technology and enterprise software space, they went out and they acquired a few different companies. Companies like Navision, Great Plains, Exapta. Those were all standalone ERP systems that were acquired and eventually rolled into the umbrella of Microsoft Dynamics. And for several years, Microsoft allowed these three systems to coexist under the Microsoft Dynamics umbrella, under their original brand names of Great Plains, Exapta, Navision. And eventually, they came out with their current flagship offering, which is Microsoft Dynamics 365. And essentially what they've done here is they've combined the best of those acquisitions and those legacy solutions to create a more common system that stands alone as Dynamics 365. It's also a solution that has been built in the cloud, and so it's meant for cloud deployments. It was one of the early adopters of cloud deployments. And Dynamics 365 has two different primary products, or sub-products, if you will. One is called Business Central, Dynamics 365 Business Central, and that is the solution for smaller and mid-market companies. It's the more vanilla solution for simpler organizations, those that aren't looking for a big, heavy ERP implementation, and ones that are looking for a lower cost option. Business Central can be a good fit in those cases. In other cases, they also provide D365 Finance and Operations, which Finance and Operations is sort of the bigger ERP solution that's meant to compete with SAP and Oracle and some of the other larger ERP vendors. So typically multinational companies and larger, more complex organizations will deploy the Finance and Operations version of Microsoft D365, while the smaller counterparts will typically implement Business Central. I recently published a video that provides a more in-depth review of Dynamics 365. What I'd like to do here today is summarize some of the strengths and weaknesses of the product. Starting with the strengths, one of the biggest strengths of the product is that it's flexible. When you compare it to other systems in the marketplace, it's generally going to be more flexible. It's something that can be configured in a number of different ways, and it can also be customized in a number of different ways as well, which could be a good or a bad thing. So that sort of flexibility is one of the big advantages of D365, as is its open architecture. The Dynamics platform was originally built on the .NET platform, which is a very open architecture that's meant to integrate third-party systems, and it's a way to tie together multiple systems into the platform. So if you're a company that has multiple legacy systems and you're looking for flexibility in integration to other systems, D365 can be a great fit. A couple of the disadvantages of the product, however, are that, first of all, the flexibility itself can be both a strength and a weakness. And what I mean by that is the flexibility of the product can also become overwhelming to organizations and project teams. It can be very difficult to decide how you want to configure the software because you have so many options. And many organizations and project teams get tangled up in all the options that they have in deploying the solution. The same goes for the ease of customization and the ability to customize. The fact that you can customize the solution and you can be flexible in the way you deploy it doesn't necessarily mean that you should. And so what we find with D365 implementations oftentimes is that the flexibility ends up becoming a cover or a cover-up for all the change management issues that your organization may have in its ability to change. And the final weakness of the product is that it is a product that isn't as robust as some may need in certain industries or in certain diverse operations. So for example, if you're an organization that has very complex manufacturing needs, there's probably better products out there that can handle some of your manufacturing needs. Same for warehouse management. If you're a high volume, complex distribution company, it may be tested or stressed by the needs that you have as an organization. So when evaluating D365, you really want to make sure you pressure test some of those outlying capabilities and the outlying business processes, especially as it relates to your secret sauce or your competitive advantage related business processes. When evaluating Microsoft Dynamics 365, it's helpful to understand the ecosystem of Microsoft. And what I mean by ecosystem is the supporting organizations and the supporting environment that allows you to use third parties to deploy the software. So Microsoft generally doesn't sell their software directly to consumers or end organizations. What they generally do is rely on third-party VARs or value-added resellers. These are organizations that are third-party partners of Microsoft, and their intent and focus is to implement Microsoft D365. Now, this is a good thing because it gives organizations a lot of different options, a lot of different resources in the marketplace that can help you deploy the product. The downside is that there's so many different options in the marketplace that there's a lot of variation in the capabilities of the different VARs and resellers that are out there. So you really want to vet those resellers carefully and make sure that you're navigating the sort of fragmented ecosystem carefully. Now, the other dimension that is both a strength and a weakness of the Microsoft ecosystem is they have what's called ISVs, or independent software vendors. And these, again, are third-party organizations that not only implement Microsoft D365, but in most cases, they've also built some sort of unique capability on top of D365. So you might have an industry-specific solution that takes the D365 platform and tailors it for a specific industry, and that IP or that intellectual property is only offered by that one ISV. So again, it's a pro and a con, because in one hand, it allows you to find a very specific version of Dynamics 365, but on the flip side, it's also exposing you to a third party that may or may not be a good fit for your organization, and it creates just yet another option that you have to choose from. The other thing that this calls into question is that with ISVs, they're the only ones that can support that version of the software. So you've somewhat limited your options in terms of who can support that specific version of Dynamics 365. So in general, if you're looking for something that's both has the capability of a broad, big ERP system, but is also tailored for your industry or your specific needs, then Microsoft D365 can be a great fit for you. Okay, we're here doing a comparison of Oracle ERP Cloud and Microsoft D365. And just to note, Third Stage Consulting is not affiliated with either vendor or any vendor for that matter. So that's an important note as we continue through the conversation here. But we've got a lot more to cover. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more of this comparison, and we'll be back with more Transformation Ground Control.
When I wake up, well, I know I'm gonna be the man who wakes up next to you. When I go out.
Hi, this is Eric Kimberling with Third Stage Consulting and your host of Transformation Ground Control. I want to encourage you to read our Guide to Organizational Change Management. It's a free report or free guide that we publish. It's one that I actually wrote that talks about best practices and lessons learned as it relates to change management. So as you know, on this podcast, we cover a lot of stuff related to the human sides of change, organizational change management, including training, communications, org design, all kinds of stuff as it relates to change management. So if you're trying to learn more about change management, or you're looking for more direction and ideas on how to get started on your change management strategy and your overall journey, be sure to check out this guide. You can read it by scanning the QR code on the screen in front of you, or in the links below for this particular podcast episode. You can find a link to take you to the page that'll allow you to register to go ahead and download that and read it for free. So be sure to check it out. It's the Guide to Organizational Change Management, written by yours truly. I hope you enjoy it. Let me know what you think, and hope you enjoy the rest of this episode. Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 129. My name is Eric Kimberling here with Kyler Cheatham. You can find new episodes of the show every Wednesday on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, as well as audio podcast platforms. And we are here playing you a video of a comparison between Oracle ERP Cloud and Microsoft D365. Let's jump back into the conversation. Now, the Dynamics 365 product rates fairly high in terms of its general functionality and capabilities. It can provide a very broad set of capabilities and business processes and workflows to help automate your business. But implementing the solution is a different story. Sometimes implementing can be very difficult. It can be challenging. I've mentioned the fact that the flexibility of the product can actually create problems during implementation if you don't have strong project governance and you don't have a strong vision of what you want of the product. So that's one thing to watch for, is the flexibility of the product is mostly a strength, but it can create risks and challenges during implementation. The other challenge of Microsoft Dynamics 365 implementations is that, as I mentioned before, the flexibility of the product can actually mask some of the change management issues that you may be facing within your organization. So in other words, just because you can change the software to do what you want it to do or the way you might operate today doesn't mean that you should. So what ends up happening oftentimes is we see clients who are resisting change, who want to keep doing things the way they always have, but use a new software to do it, and they end up changing the software just to automate the way they've always done things. So that's a dynamic you really want to watch for, and Dynamics 365 implementations tend to require even more change management support than other ERP systems. And finally, another challenge with D365 implementations is that because of the flexibility and the architecture, the open integration, all the advantages on the technical side, it ends up creating a myopic focus on the technology. You end up focusing resources on the technology pieces of the transformation rather than the more important operational and organizational pieces. So that's a pitfall you want to watch for, is don't let the flexibility and the complexity of the product suck you into a focus strictly on the technology, because ultimately it's the people and process side of the equation that will ultimately make you successful. So these are a few of the things to think about as you consider a Dynamics 365 implementation. Now, to be successful in your Microsoft Dynamics 365 transformation, I encourage you to download our definitive guide to a successful Dynamics 365 implementation. This guide lays out some of the best practices and lessons learned from our experience helping clients implement Dynamics 365. But in summary, or in general, some of the things that you want to think about are, first of all, make sure that D365 is the right fit for you. Make sure you've evaluated it against other options in the marketplace. Once you've chosen the software, if you do decide that D365 is the right fit for you, make sure that you have a solid implementation strategy and plan that addresses some of the risks and pitfalls that we've talked about here today. And probably more than anything, make sure that you have solid change management. You have a very clear change management strategy that's meant to address some of the challenges we've talked about here today.
So let's recap some of the key pros and cons of Microsoft Dynamics 365. This product fills a really unique spot in the marketplace for ERP software because it is broad and scalable enough for some of the world's largest organizations, but at the same time, it's incredibly flexible to meet higher to mid-size organizations. The reason it's easy for us to go through these software evaluations is because we have absolutely no affiliation or financial ties with Microsoft. They even often get mad at us when we talk about things that are happening within their marketplace, like the sunsetting of their Great Plains software. As an overview of Microsoft Dynamics 365, it's really comprised of those two primary versions, which is Operations and Business Central. Now, F&O is generally the product that's used by more complex global organizations, while Business Central is often used by smaller to mid-sized organizations. They have both of these systems kind of intertwined because of acquisitions Microsoft has made over the years. Now, arguably the biggest strength of D365 is the traditional Microsoft look and feel, which is familiar to a lot of organizations and user adoption can often be more successful. In that same lane, user experience in some ways is more intuitive among employees that are using Microsoft Office 365, SharePoint, Teams, and other Microsoft productivity tools. That integration is very smooth when it comes to the core ERP with those different applications. It's also known for its flexibility and ease of integration across many other systems. A piece of feedback we get from a lot of our clients utilizing or considering D365 is its ability to really create that interoperability across the organization with data integrations and full visibility into different workflows. Its open architecture makes it really easy to integrate with different third-party systems that might be specific to your industry or bolt-on applications. Now, this does have a dark side. Just because D365 is very flexible doesn't always mean that flexibility is a good thing. It's very easy to snowball and overcomplicate this system because of all of its opportunities and functionalities. Doesn't mean that you need to utilize all of those for your organization. Another consideration with a very flexible system is it can be difficult to really strategize on implementation and lead to overall failure. An implementation or ERP failure of this size can be incredibly expensive and disruptive to the business. Another consideration is just the overall maturity of D365 and its functionality. The system does suffer from lack of maturity just due to recent introduction into the marketplace. Some of the more advanced functionality that exists in Microsoft Dynamics or customers might be used to, the on-premise solution, has not been integrated into the SaaS or cloud-based platform. Now, one of the biggest drawbacks and a super important consideration when looking at Microsoft D365 is the reseller network. The reseller partner network is arguably the biggest weakness of this system because Microsoft takes a really laissez-faire approach to managing its partner network when compared to other vendors, and that leads to really subpar implementation partners. Now, an implementation partner is incredibly important on the technical side of achieving a successful digital transformation. Without really a niche expertise into this weakness or an independent consultant advisor coach like Third Stage, it is really hard to get a quality implementation partner with D365 knowledge. So in summary, is D365 a good fit for your organization? Well, as always, that depends on your business priorities and goals. But if you are looking for something that is incredibly flexible, that is well known in the marketplace, and relatively easy to use, D365 could be a great option for your organization. However, if you're in search of something that is more mature in functionality or has a lot of tight processes, standardization, there are other products such as SAP S/4HANA, for example, that might be a better fit for what your needs are as an organization. If you are considering D365 as your ERP software, I highly recommend you download our Microsoft Dynamics 365 handbook, which I have linked down here in our notes wherever you are getting this video today. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel for more information on what software might be right for you, and continue watching here because we are going to go into a comparison of Oracle ERP Cloud. So now that we've really dove into the pros and cons of D365, let's transition to the comparison between D365 and Oracle ERP Cloud. So just like before, I'll play Eric Kimberling, our CEO and founder's review of Oracle ERP Cloud, and we will summarize the comparison between the two.
Oracle has been working long and hard at their whole ERP application offering. Back in the early 2000s, Oracle acquired JD Edwards and PeopleSoft, Hyperion, and a number of other ERP-related systems. And also in the early 2000s, Oracle developed Fusion, which was a middleware intended to pull together all of these different applications they had acquired. And now with the migration to the cloud and with the evolution of Oracle Fusion, Oracle has completed its transition to the cloud, or at least it's in the process of completing its transition to the cloud. And so Oracle ERP Cloud really is a culmination of all of those efforts over the years. Now, Oracle is commonly compared to SAP. It's one of the most common options for the larger organizations and the more global and multinational types of organizations. But there's some distinct differences between SAP and Oracle, and I'm going to talk about Oracle in general, in particular how it relates to SAP as well as other ERP systems in the marketplace. So one of the biggest strengths of Oracle ERP Cloud, particularly if you're comparing Oracle to SAP, is its flexibility. In general, it's a product that, because it's been built via a best-of-breed acquisition model of acquiring all these different systems that I mentioned earlier, it's really taken the best of these different applications that it's developed, and it's created a very flexible offering. Not only is the software itself flexible in terms of the general capabilities it can provide to different types of organizations, but the whole Fusion middleware provides a certain amount of flexibility and gives you a lot of different options in terms of what types of systems you might bolt on to Oracle-based systems, even if those systems aren't Oracle-based. So in general, the functionality of the product itself, as well as the architecture with Oracle Fusion as the middleware, provides a lot of flexibility and options that other ERP providers generally aren't able to provide. So flexibility is something that's important to you if you're a nimble organization, you're growing quickly, you're multinational, you have diverse needs across your organization. Oracle can be a very good fit for you. Another strength of Oracle ERP Cloud is its breadth of capabilities. There's certain capabilities that the product is very strong at. So in addition to providing general broad capabilities that span financials and supply chain, manufacturing, warehouse management, performance management, human capital management, CRM, all the stuff that you might expect from an ERP system, there's a few different areas where Oracle ERP tends to be stronger than some of its competitors. One example is a function called CPQ. That's an acronym for Configure Price Quote. So if you're an engineer-to-order type of manufacturing organization or a make-to-order manufacturing organization, or perhaps you're a construction organization where you rely on different estimates and bids in order to sell your product, the CPQ capability is something that's very strong with Oracle. And what that does is it allows your sales team to not only sell your product or service, but it allows you to configure and quote a customizable or tailored offering to your customers. So if you're the type of organization that has that type of product where you would benefit from that, the CPQ capability can be very strong. Now, another area that Oracle is very strong is in its human capital management and talent management. So if you're an organization that might be looking at Workday or SuccessFactors, but you're also looking at potential ERP solutions, Oracle can be a great fit and a great alternative to SuccessFactors or Workday, simply because the capability is very strong, but it also integrates very nicely with the core Oracle ERP functionality. And then a third area that Oracle is very strong in functionality-wise is its general performance management, business intelligence, and reporting types of capabilities. So Oracle several years ago bought Hyperion, which is sort of a best-in-class financial reporting and consolidation type of tool. That's one example of capabilities that Oracle has built into its offering. In addition to that, it tends to be very strong, not just in terms of financial reporting, but also just general dashboards and general business intelligence and enterprise performance management. So if getting real clear visibility into your organization, quantitative visibility is very important, that's another strength of Oracle as well. Okay, we're here doing a comparison of Oracle ERP Cloud and Microsoft D365. And just to note, Third Stage Consulting is not affiliated with either vendor or any vendor for that matter. So that's an important note as we continue through the conversation here. But we've got a lot more to cover. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more of this comparison, and we'll be back with more Transformation Ground Control.
Could you whisper in my ear the things you want to feel? I'll give you anything.
Interested in working for a company that truly values your unique skills and experience? Here at Third Stage, we don't hire based on resumes alone. We look at the full candidate, experience, and willingness to provide excellent service for our clients. Within a technology, independent, and agnostic consulting firm, you have the opportunity to learn across industries with a diverse group of clients. Our consultants also have the opportunity to diversify their portfolio and learn across technology systems. If you're interested in joining a high-growth entrepreneurial organization, please reach out to us at work@thirdstage-consulting.com.
Anything you ever dreamed to be.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 129. My name is Eric Kimberly, here with Kyler Cheatham. You can find new episodes of the show every Wednesday on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, as well as audio podcast platforms. And we are here playing you a video of a comparison between Oracle ERP Cloud and Microsoft D365. Let's jump back into the conversation. So while on one hand, Oracle ERP Cloud has some broad capabilities, there are some areas where Oracle ERP Cloud is not yet mature, or at least not yet mature compared to its legacy on-premise counterparts. So one example is manufacturing. That's an area that Oracle ERP Cloud is not quite as far along as, say, JD Edwards, the on-premise JD Edwards manufacturing solution that has been around for decades now and had the benefit of plenty of R&D dollars over the years. Oracle is taking the best of JD Edwards and other manufacturing capabilities and moving those capabilities to Oracle ERP Cloud, but that's still very much a work in progress. So if you're a complex manufacturer, that's an area that I'd highly recommend you really dive into and understand what the strengths and some of the limitations are of Oracle ERP Cloud in that regard. And then another example is more complex supply chains. Companies that have global supply chains, complex supply chains, that's an area where there's still some limitations of the new cloud solution. So if that's an area that's important to you, I'd highly recommend diving into that area as well. So in general, it's important to recognize that Oracle ERP Cloud, while it has a breadth of capabilities, is not quite as strong in several areas, including the two I've mentioned here, as it relates to some of its legacy products like JD Edwards and Siebel and PeopleSoft, for example. I mentioned before how flexibility is one of the strengths of Oracle ERP Cloud. And along those same lines is its ability to integrate with third-party systems. And because of that Fusion middleware that Oracle spent so many years developing, in fact, it was often ridiculed for many years because it took so long for Oracle to develop that solution, it's really given them a leg up compared to some of its competitors now because it had invested so heavily in that product for so long. So it's allowed Oracle to do two things. One is it's allowed Oracle to take these applications that it's acquired over the years, like JD Edwards, Siebel, PeopleSoft, et cetera, and integrate them into a cloud-based offering that ties together as a more cohesive unit. Secondly, it allows better integration with third-party applications. So if there's some sort of system that you need, either for regulatory purposes or just because you want a best-of-breed capability that isn't offered by Oracle, that Fusion middleware can make it easier to bolt in systems that complement Oracle ERP Cloud. So if integration is something that's going to be important to you, if you know you're going to have legacy systems or third-party systems that are non-Oracle based, Oracle ERP Cloud can be a great tool set to help you do that. So I've talked a lot about the different moving pieces and moving parts of Oracle, and while that's generally a strength in that there's a lot of capabilities, a lot of flexibility, a lot of integration that can happen with the solution, it also creates a certain amount of technical complexity that can be overwhelming for some organizations to handle. So for example, if you're an organization that doesn't have a very sophisticated or robust IT capability in-house, or you don't have solution architects in-house that can help manage some of these moving pieces and integration points, then Oracle may not be the best fit for you. But if you have a robust IT staff, you have solution architects that can figure this stuff out, it may be a good fit for you. But either way, I'd highly recommend that you watch out for the common pitfall with Oracle implementations, which is oftentimes organizations get so caught up in just trying to manage all these moving parts and trying to make the technology work and fit together that they forget about the more important parts of the transformation, the things related to people and processes, so the non-technical aspects of the transformation. So even if you do have the capabilities to support the complexity of Oracle, the other risk there that you still want to mitigate if you do move forward with Oracle is to ensure that you have proper focus on those people and process areas. So just as is the case with every review I do, there are some pros and cons with Oracle, and hopefully I've helped you identify what those strengths and weaknesses are here. Whether or not it's the right fit for you as an organization, it really depends on your priorities, your needs, and what your objectives are. If you're a high growth, flexible, nimble, entrepreneurial type of organization that values scale and flexibility and integration, it can be a great fit. If you're a company that values consistency and standardization and common business processes and simplicity from a technology perspective, Oracle may not be the best fit. So it's really a matter of weighing those strengths and weaknesses and those pros and cons and figuring out what the right priority is for your organization.
So Oracle ERP Cloud is really one of the most common known ERP systems in the marketplace, and it really has helped a variety of businesses achieve a very successful digital transformation. That said, let's unpack some of the points that Eric made. So really, Oracle ERP Cloud right now is number 2 in the marketplace regarding market share, and that's right behind SAP S/4HANA. It's commonly used by Fortune 500 companies to Fortune 200 companies, so for larger global complex companies. So just like D365, Oracle ERP Cloud platform is relatively a new entrant to the ERP space. Oracle itself has a legacy company, but the flagship product in Oracle ERP Cloud is newer to the marketplace. So Oracle itself as an entity has been around for a long time and is really well established in the industry. However, some organizations still really don't have an understanding of what exactly Oracle ERP Cloud is in relation to their other legacy systems. The product itself is newer to the marketplace. It's a lot like SAP S/4HANA and Microsoft Dynamics 365. It just had a head start over a decade ago in R&D. What they called Oracle Fusion was the actual system. They spent a lot of time and money trying to develop Fusion as a solution. And at the time in the industry, they really took a lot of criticism for never really releasing Oracle Fusion. They were having a lot of trouble in technical development, but that said, now Oracle ERP Cloud gets those 10 years head start on SAP and Microsoft in R&D budget. It's also a cool consideration that Oracle started off as a database company. And that's worth noting because Oracle's databases are a key foundational piece of both Oracle Fusion and Oracle ERP Cloud. Another confusing piece in the marketplace is Oracle ERP Cloud is not the same as Oracle NetSuite. NetSuite is a product that Oracle actually acquired several years ago, and NetSuite really owns that small to mid-market companies. We recommend NetSuite a lot, but it's not always a great comparison with D365 because a company looking at D365 likely has the size of what you would need for Oracle ERP Cloud. It's much like D365 in the fact that it is a multi-tenant cloud solution, so that means that that subscription-based or SaaS-based solution could be flexible, but a little less flexible than D365. So that distinction is important that Oracle Fusion, Oracle ERP Cloud, and Oracle NetSuite are all different solutions that need their own evaluation within an organization. Some other key considerations when you're looking at Oracle ERP Cloud is that cloud maturity. It really needs to be a key consideration when looking at enterprise technology, and really that just alludes to the fact that Oracle ERP Cloud has not been around that long as, say, eBusiness Suite or other Oracle's legacy products. Another example of this is something like JD Edwards that had an on-premise solution that's been in the marketplace for a long time, and now Oracle, like many other companies in the software marketplace, is undergoing a massive transition to the cloud, which again, we talked about, they have a little bit of a head start, a foot in the door with the whole cloud migration because of Oracle Fusion. Though it's still not a mature solution when compared to eBusiness Suite or JD Edwards or even NetSuite that has been in the cloud longer than Oracle ERP Cloud. The reason that this is so important when you're implementing Oracle ERP Cloud within your organization is that you recognize any of these weaknesses or lack of functionalities. We have a lot of clients, like Eric mentioned, that have very complex requirements, and we've ultimately found out through our extensive evaluation process that Oracle ERP Cloud systems was too much of a stretch for the functionality that they needed. These capabilities simply have not transitioned to the cloud yet. That doesn't mean Oracle doesn't plan to do that someday. It's just not something that every functionality that you get with their on-premise legacy systems will now be in market for you to utilize. The reason we are so passionate about talking about this is we see a lot of organizations that get stuck with the limitations of the cloud maturity of this product. And the bummer part about that, maybe I shouldn't say that, and the negative in that is that many times software vendors, because it's their job to sell you software, won't be completely transparent about the lack of limitations, which is why we are often in the room when these negotiations or selections are happening, so we can ensure that our clients are achieving maximum business value with the requirements that they need from a software system. A common theme of Oracle ERP Cloud and D365 is the products are very flexible. They can create tools and have the ability to tailor or customize the software to best meet the needs and processes of your business. As we talked about earlier in this video, there is drawbacks to over flexibility. Just because you can change something doesn't necessarily mean you should. What's going to happen here, if you're looking at these two systems side by side, is you have a clear future state operating model and business process maps to ensure you're choosing the right level of flexibility for your business. Historically, Oracle has been extremely strong in data analytics, financials, all things that look at enterprise performance management. And that stems from its history as a database company. If you are an organization that is very data heavy and likes to have extensive analytics within your core systems, Oracle ERP Cloud could be a very healthy solution for you. Another key consideration when you have such a strong database foundation is you have the ability to take those automations, AI, machine learning, more emerging technologies to the next level. It has the foundation to enable artificial intelligence and machine learning because of that data-oriented enterprise performance management background. This can go across your organization when we're looking at EPM or CRM for your sales team, supply chain management, all of those different data-heavy departments that really need that ability to use the system and dig into analytics. That said, if that emerging technology in AI, automation, smart manufacturing is important to your organization and is a core need for your system upgrade, Oracle ERP Cloud is a great option. Another consideration when it comes to looking at Oracle ERP Cloud is just the complexity and cost. Because it is so data heavy in its system, it has that ability to become very overwhelming. This complexity leads to increased time and cost during implementation and just overall is more challenging. You need to consider what needs to be customized or configured to set up the system to work to showcase those end-to-end processes. The downside of this is just overkill, right? Or too much complexity for smaller organizations. But if you are that larger organization or you aspire to be in such a high growth area, it's going to provide all of those capabilities, a robust list of capabilities that you might be looking for. The last thing to consider is Oracle ERP Cloud is expensive. It is one of the top ERP systems in the industry, and when it comes to looking at cost versus functionality, it certainly has robust capabilities and is worth the cost that it charges. But if budget is a key consideration, looking at something like D365 side by side would be a good option for you. And the one consideration I'll add for both of these systems is that implementations are incredibly complex because likely these larger organizations are more likely to fail just because there's more opportunity for breakage or pain points. That's not necessarily something that points to the software directly, but it's a consideration when you are a larger, very sophisticated, complex organization. You want to ensure that you have appropriate implementation phase 0 planning and a very strong project management core team to ensure your implementation is on track. I hope that overview helps you compare these two very sophisticated ERP systems for your business. If you do have any questions about software selection or maybe a functionality that your industry needs specifically, feel free to reach out to me directly at kyler.cheatham@thirdstage-consultinggroup.com. debrief.com. My contact information is also in the description for this video. Thanks so much for joining us today, and I will see you next time.
All right, good stuff. Hopefully that will help provide some good comparison points for any of you that might be considering those two technologies. And hopefully if you're not considering either of those two technologies, it gives you some things to think about as you assess the strengths and weaknesses of potential technologies you might be deploying to your organizations. So I want to thank you, Kyler, for helping me through that discussion and that comparison video. I also want to thank the audience for the great questions here today, and appreciate you all being here. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday, so be sure to check out our next episode next week. But in the meantime, have a great week. Thank you for listening to Transformation Ground Control, and we'll see you next time. Take care.